Welcome, welcome. This is the Sourceseeker Hour special panel presentation. Very interesting subject. I want to share that this ideal of this show came from my friend, Cassandra. I was reading a lot of her posts, and so often she talked about the patients. She didn't give private information or anything. She just gave an overview that there are so many different personalities, lifestyles, different types of relationships, and you have to kind of be aware of all the different kinds of relationships. It didn't used to be like that 20 years ago. This is a recent thing, and we're going to talk about some of the reasons why, and is it fulfilling? Now, I've invited people from different communities. I've invited people from the LGBTQ community. I think I'm saying right. If you all see me saying it wrong, please correct me. I've invited people from the poly Armory community. Again, if I'm saying anything wrong, I'm a novice at the terms and those different aspects of those things, but I'd like to be more aware. I'd like my audience to be more aware, because there is a segment of our community that participates in these particular lifestyles, and it's a part of them. And I have kids, I have loved ones. Any one of them may come up and tell me at one time or another, this is how I live. And I want to have some relatability to understanding what they're going through. So I would like to invite our guests to introduce themselves if they would like to. If you don't want to, that's fine too. We're going to be free flowing, and we want to be free to say what we want to say or not say what we want to say. I will introduce myself first for those of you who may not know me. My name is Baruti Carl Alexander. Baruti means teacher, and this is my 130th episode of the Sourceseeker Hour. 130th, so thank you very much. Cassandra, would you introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Cassandra Barnes. I am a registered nurse for 35 years and a licensed psychotherapy as well. I own a private practice called the Victoria Barnes Mental Health and Wellness Center after my grandmother, who's transitioned, and because of her impact and influence, I wanted to memorialize her by naming my practice after her. And I'm just grateful to be here. I specialize as a therapist in mental health wellness, a professional therapy, and I'm just grateful to be here.
Carolyn, would you like to share next, whatever you would like to say? If you just want to say hi.
Hi, my name is Carolyn Williams. I'm a former classmate of Carl's. That's all I got.
Thank you, thank you. Camille, would you like to share?
Yes, I went to Prairie View A&M University as well. I am the Houston CMOS Queen. I sell and manufacture CMOS gels, smoothies and drinks, as well as I am a Houston real estate agent for Keller Williams Metropolitan.
Oh, that's great.
Well, thank you very much. The way I'd like to start this conversation is with the definitions of love. The definition of love. Also, the definition of family. Love, an intense feeling of deep affection. Love, a great interest and pleasure in something. We all want love, and we go to the ends of the earth for love. I mean, I believe I've been in love one time. It's hard to tell sometimes. Sometimes it's infatuation. Sometimes it's, it should never be a logical feeling. Well, let me take that back. It should be logical as well as a feeling, but to say should, I can't define love like that. So let me take it back. What is your definition of love? Camille.
So my definition of love is basically 1 Corinthians 13, like love is patient, love is kind. And I really focus on giving that to everyone. And I feel like a lot of us take that for granted because it's not boastful. It does not expect anything in return, right? And it can be enduring. And I feel like the climate of where we are, it's really hard for most people to share that with one another because you are supposed to love thy brother and thy sister. And that means not only in your community, but everybody that's living, you know, every living being. So I really define it that way. And especially in relationships, I feel that when you decide to be in a romantic relationship, you really put that to the test, because if it's family, friends, I feel that, you know, if something bothers you, first you have to love yourself. So if this is kind of impeding on my love for myself, then I can remove myself, right? I don't have to take negativity and things like that. But I do feel like in a partnership, that's why it's important to select and be selective on who you choose, because you are there to long suffering, you know, so through the ups and the downs. I've been divorced before. I didn't choose to leave, but it's just like I took my vows very seriously. So it's just, I feel like a lot of, especially like millennials and down, we really take that for granted. And we don't really focus on what that means. So my definition is that, a word for word.
There are different levels of love in different situations. You mentioned about just a kind of natural love for your fellow man, but that's different than love for a romantic partner. It's different than love for your brother or your physical brother or your sister. Do you have physical brothers and sisters?
I do, but I don't really see much of a difference outside of the romantical part, you know, because I think even in a parental relationship, sometimes that we show conditional love rather than unconditional. So I believe love is unconditional and you should spread that across the board. Only thing is when you're in a partnership, then you have to choose wisely, because when they do that, you can't just say, well, I don't want to talk to you for a week. I don't want to talk to you, you know, because you could do that with anybody else. You could take time away from family, you could take time away from friends, but I feel like that's for me, the only difference is that the romantical part, the passion, you know.
So you saying you can't tell them I'm not going to talk to you for a week. Carolyn, what you say about that?
Yeah, I mean, actually you can. Yeah, I'm divorced too, but actually you can do that with a partner. But I think my definition of love is action. I'm straight action. Because you know, as you date people, like I love you, but if I can't see it, you know, if I can't see your sacrifice, if I can't see you putting yourself off of me, I just can't feel it. I can't feel you, because it's just empty words to me, telling me I hear that all the time. Oh girl, you know, and guys say it so nonchalantly, like they mean it. Oh, you know, baby, you know, I love you, you know, and then the same token, he's like, okay, we're gonna split this bill 50-50, you know, something like that. So I believe love is an action word. And I think whoever you love, you should try to make that person happy. Your goal when you love someone is to make them happy. I mean, of course you want to be loved too, but that's not really my goal. However, when I put myself, me personally, when I put myself out for someone, and if they don't reciprocate, I do tend to do less, because I kind of feed off people. It's like because you really can't. I'm not a mind reader. So the only thing I can go by is your action. So if your action doesn't say I love you, then I don't want to be wasting my time, my energy, putting my energy into this person and they not reciprocating. I mean, although I try initially, first I treat you how I want to be treated, and then I treat you how you treat me. And that's when it kind of dwindles, you know. Sometimes love, lust, it's get kind of foggy, but yeah, I really think love is an action word.
Sounds powerful. Cassandra, what you feel about love? What does it mean?
Maybe I'm too much of a psychotherapist and I've been in the game for way too long, because I think the only person that's capable of true unconditional love is Christ. I think that we say unconditional love and it sounds really good, but to me, all love has conditions, whether it is you can get extreme in any love, whether it's parent, child, husband, wife, friends, whatever. I believe that human love is incapable of unconditional, because human beings can get so wretched until it can literally push the limits as far as they can go. So I don't believe in unconditional love. I believe that we try, especially as parents with our children, may be more long suffering than love.
Yeah.
But I don't believe that only Christ, in my opinion, is truly capable of what it truly means to exhibit unconditional love. I agree with love being multi-layered. I have basic human love and respect for humanity, as I was taught and practiced as an RN, as a nurse, and as a human being, as a therapist. But that's not gonna be the same expression that I'm gonna have in my expression of love with my daughter, or my siblings, or my mother. Those are all different layers and expressions of love. I do believe, as Ms. Carolyn has said, love is an action word. This is one thing that I find extremely puzzling today, as I counsel a lot of, I'll get the generation alphabets, whoever's in their 20s and 30s, whatever that is. I don't know if it's Gen X, Gen Z, millennials, whoever they are, everybody under 40. They go on apps and 2 weeks later they're in love, and I was in love. Well, how long have you been dating? 3 weeks, And the more dangerous part of that is they'll chat, haven't had even a FaceTime video meeting for 3 months, 6 months, a year, not even a video meeting. And I'm in love and I'm committed. And it's labels that are dangerously thrown around, is making people very psychotic. Absolutely nothing has occurred other than text, chat conversation. We're not even talking video conversation. And you're exclusive, or I'm in love with them, or I can see myself being with them for the rest of my life. You have no experience with this individual, period. And that is another type of pandemic that's happening today, using that terminology. Where he said he was in love with me and I was in love with her, and it's making people extremely psychotic, depressed, suicidal, full of anxiety, because that terminology is thrown around very loosely today. Yeah. I do believe in the biblical definition, as was stated earlier, it is kind, it is patient, is long suffering, is all of these things. It makes no accounting of wrongs in particular. But as human beings, to walk that out in its total fulfillment, we try as hard as we can to get to that. But I honestly believe the probably the only person that was truly capable of that fully was Christ. But we strive for it, we try, we want to be patient and kind, but I believe that it is reciprocal as well. If I keep showing up for you and you never show up for me, then that needs to be reevaluated. And I don't care what relationship. I don't care if it's me and my mother, or me and my child, or whomever. That's with whomever. So I think everybody had a piece of the definition, but where I would challenge is unconditional, because I don't think we as we're too flawed for true unconditional love. The Bible even says the heart is wicked above all, who can know it? That means that there's innate deception and innate negativity in the human heart. And so we just strive to do it the best way we can, as the Bible for our motto, if we are Christian believers.
Yes, ma'am. I want to welcome Coach Nikita. How are you, ma'am?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Yes, ma'am. I'm going to review some of the things that we talked about so I can bring you up to speed. But I wanted to comment on the general conversation. I do believe it is impossible to have unconditional love and truly love yourself, because even, for instance, if you have a son and you consistently want to love and take care of your son, your daughter, but they consistently try to do things to hurt you, at some point, you got to have some conditions, or you're not doing your job in love in that context. So I think those two things, unconditional love and self-love, does not totally go in hand.
But it's
Also,
conditions versus boundaries, because it's okay to have boundaries in love. That doesn't mean that love is conditional. That's just boundaries, because you love yourself.
well, then we got to talk about what's the definition of unconditional love.
Yeah.
Isn't that?
Yeah. So by the term unconditional, we are saying no matter what they do,
What?
no matter what they do, we are going to love them. Now, that could be true, but what does that look like? Does that look like give them whatever they want? Even though, they have pushed over the barriers
I mean,
all
giving
the time,
someone what
every
they want
time?
isn't love, though. That's just giving, God loves us whether we do wrong or right. That doesn't change the love that you have. Just because you're getting something doesn't mean that someone even loves you.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So it's just like, I feel like a lot of times we misconstrue the word.
Yeah.
I think that is the case. I think a better word would be love with levels. I think that would be a better word, because unconditional, the way it looks, the way it is shaped, unconditional, that kind of says you're going to do whatever. I understand what you're saying, but that word just doesn't fit. But let me go to this also. In this day and age, with all of the different things, going back to what Cassandra said, a lot of people are so desperate and so in a situation that true love is hard, very hard to find. It's just so, because so many different factors. You got peer pressures, you got the media, and we really, in a lot of ways, don't even know what love looks like, because it is so many different things that come in the way, and it's difficult to even, and we're cynical. We are not trusting and open enough in a lot of cases to allow love to come in. And it's hard to find. Now, that's not in every situation, but by the statistics and by all the things that are happening, what you talked about, Cassandra, people they just feeling and reaching out, trying to find love anywhere. And it's a very difficult process. It's different from the time when we used to write letters to one another. We used to hold hands and walk and open the door for one another, all of those different things. Today, the connection has to happen so quickly, or we don't have time for it. I want to introduce Coach Nikita Bowman. I'm gonna let you introduce yourself. She's a psychoanalyst also, and she's gonna represent some of the conversation that we're gonna have. So I'd like to introduce you, Sister Nikita. Share your introduction, whatever you would like to share. Hello, Sister Nikita?
We
Oh,
lost-
hello? Are you there?
Here she
Oh, she
comes.
fell off for a second. She's coming back in.
Okay,
But the next term I'd like to talk about is family. Okay, Sister Nikita, you ready for introduction?
Yes, sorry about that. My name is Nikita Bowman. I'm a licensed professional counselor, the owner of Tackle Your Dreams and the Dream Workshop, which is a nonprofit and for-profit that is helping to bring mental health care to Black, Brown, and queer folks here in Texas. Specifically, we're all generation of mental health as well.
You broke off a
My
little bit
introduction
there.
right now, we are, oh, that was my introduction. We're talking about love right now,
Yes.
correct?
What is love?
I do think that we a biblical
Something is
definition
wrong with
and
your connection, Sister
Yeah,
Nikita.
it's breaking up really bad.
Yeah, something is
Okay.
wrong with your connection.
all right,
Uh,
I'm gonna get on my computer. I'll be right back.
Okay, well, we'll catch up when you come in, and
Yes.
we're going to continue. The next term I talked about was family. Family. I kind of connect love with family, but family can have a different definition. I looked it up. This is the definition of family: a group of one or more parents and their children living together as a unit. The other definition, all the descendants of a common ancestor. I think there has to be another definition of family in this day and age.
Mhm.
Two or more people who act in love and support for one another. What do you think about that, Cassandra?
I think we absolutely have to redefine family based on the dynamics of today around what they call alternative family dynamics. And that can be around the family structure of today, where you have various types of couples raising children related to their sexual orientation or presentations like that. You will have gang members that consider themselves family. That's a big draw for young people when they've been in family or natural birth family or situations that's made them feel unaccepted or neglected or traumatized in certain ways. Then they start seeking out gangs and other groups to connect with, and they consider them family. I have military clients. When I do my assessment and I ask them, who do you view as family? A lot of them say the people that they served with, in combat with. Those people that were in the fight together is family. So we have a lot of broad definitions of family, and family doesn't mean healthy relationships among people with commonality, like parents and kids. It's again, very prevalent now. I didn't realize it till I started counseling how many children don't speak to their parents and how many parents have nothing to do with their children. And they would have been estranged for years. We've seen it in celebrities. We've seen it in people that are kind of put out there. Well, I was estranged from my father. I was estranged from my mother. They're family technically, but they're not family as far as commonality and achieving common goals and things of that nature. So the definition definitely has to be rewritten as it relates to what you read, in my opinion.
Yes, ma'am. Sister Nikita, are you there? She's not in yet. Camille, comment on what do you see family, those definitions I gave you, and then the definition that I came up with, which is two or more people who act in love and support for one another. Is that a more appropriate family definition?
I accept all. I guess I resonate more with the last one, you know, because of how things are, because, you know, a lot of people don't understand what love is, don't know how to express it, don't know how to show it. So that's why I feel like I'd resonate more with the last one, but family is who you live with. Family is your lineage as well, you know, whether we get along with them or not, that's fact, you know. So
Go ahead.
So therefore I accept all of them.
Yes, ma'am. I just wanted to interject the definition that Jesus had. And of course, his family came to him and said, what are you doing? You need to come back home. He said, well, my family are the ones who are here with me, working with me, doing the will of God. And so he bypassed his family at that time. But that's the Bible definition, or that's the definition Jesus gave. Carolyn, what is your opinion of that definition of family? Carolyn, unmute.
Unmute.
Let me tell her. Unmute. Let me try to.
Okay, she's unmuted.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry. My daughter had called and she's out the country, but I didn't really hear your definitions. But
Well, let me tell you again, two or more people who act in love and support for one another.
Okay, the only family I'm familiar with is the biological ones and the ones where you live together. And I know people have close friends and they call them family. And I guess that's okay, but I only relate to like the ones you brought up with, live with, family, your blood, adopted, you know, the people that join into your unit, you know. And I think the other one's just friends, close friends.
Okay. That being said, there are a lot of, just like Cassandra said, there are a lot of definitions, or there are a lot of people who call themselves family. And we were talking about that the definition may need to change because people live in different ways. That's why I said love and support one another.
No.
Because everybody who's in your family may not support you, even though they are of your blood.
Right.
They may not support you. They may not be on your side, may not even like you. And so the definition, even though that person is supposed to be your family, they're supposed to love and support you, or am I going too far with that? But we are all human beings in a human family, so it should be okay for that definition of family to change. Sister Nikita, what is your definition of family?
Coming from a different perspective, I think that I forgot the sister's name that mentioned serving in the military. Sometimes that is your family. I think family can be, as they say, the family you choose, not only the family that you're born into. So I agree with the different definitions that you have had. I know in the LGBTQ community, we sometimes elect family because people are ostracized or outed from their families, and they need someplace to go, someone to love them, accept them for who they are. And so family isn't always the family that you're born into. And I think sometimes family is circumstance. You can consider them to be friends, but I think that is tied into that love question you guys were asking earlier about how you recognize love can be directly tied into how you recognize family as
Oh,
well.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yes. Did you want to share any more, Nikita, about the definition of love? I know we didn't get a chance to hear it when you were trying to express it earlier.
Yes, when we talk about love, I think it's hard to define love. There are the biblical definitions, there's the Webster or whoever's definition, but I think that we all have our own gauge and recognize love in a different way, depending on our circumstances and the way that we came up. Specifically, let's say a gang member might recognize love by being someone who will jump you into a gang. And so now you recognize violence with being love, you recognize toxic traits as being love, and then you jump your partner into your relationship later on. And so we want to say love is patient and love is kind and love is these things, but I think it depends sometimes on circumstances on what you recognize as being love. And that can be a negative or toxic definition as well, because that's what you recognize. Because if we talk about like love languages, we all recognize love differently from that perspective. I think that sometimes we can recognize toxic traits or not so good things as love and confuse them. And then we perpetuate that in the relationships that we get into later on.
Yeah.
So I
Yes,
see it as a
ma'am.
different way, that sometimes love isn't always a good thing, at least for the person who receives it, even though the person who is trying to love that person is doing the best they can with what they have.
I want to go into that more a little bit, that you're saying that love in some situations is not good for the person who's receiving it, even though the person who's trying to give it doing the best they can. So, because we talked about unconditional and conditional love earlier. So in some situations, it's better to not to try to love. It's better to stand back. It's better to hold off caring for a person because they cannot accept it at this time. Is that what you're saying?
Love them from a distance.
Sometimes you do have to cut people off, even though, and that's how you end up with the family you choose from that perspective as well.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Okay. Okay. Well, that goes back to our issue of why it's so hard to find love, why it's so hard to connect with people today. And the media, social media, all the media has a lot to do with that. And we didn't have those problems 40 years ago. You had more human interaction. I wrote a article one time recently about social media as opposed to in person. What are the differences? What are the advantages? And as we know, during the COVID situation, the students, a lot of them were really having a hard time because they did not have that human interaction. Now, some of them excelled, but very small percentage excelled. And there was an increase in suicide. There was an increase in just frustration and everything else. And so human interaction is so important, but a lot of people, because of the media age that we're in, they gravitate and pull away and do not venture out because they can. They can have a whole personality online and don't have to venture out. They don't even have to go to the grocery store. So how has that new situation affected society? Camille.
Oh, me first? I was still trying to wrap my head around what that is.
As
So
it relates to, he was saying, I guess I'll mix. Okay, are you as it relates to dating? What you said? I'm trying to get what he was saying.
Okay, what I'm saying is human beings do not relate in the same way in relationships as much as they used to because they don't have to. You can have a relationship online and not necessarily have to deal with all the human reactions, the nonverbal reactions that we see, all of those particular things. Now, of course, you could take it to the next level and get involved and connect, but you can also live your whole life online. You can have the grocery store come to your house.
Mhm.
So how has that affected overall relationships? Does it make people more cynical and not want to get involved as much? Because you can just cut people off online very quickly.
I feel like it does add to cynical because like humans need human interaction.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a part of the reason why we have so many issues, because people are faking and not being them true selves and not being able to show. I feel like TV over the years has really made people feel like there's only one way of being. Therefore, people can't be upset. People can't be angry. People can't be, just, I feel like it's really stifled the human emotions, right? So then when you're online, you hide behind that. You hide behind this image that you've made. You hide behind this image that TV, social media has made, and you're not being real. And it's just like, it's only a matter of time until the stuff hits the fan and you can't take it anymore, and that's where I feel like the cynical part comes, because you need to be able to go through all these emotions. And because of we've lost the family unit, I feel like personally since like the war, because we've had women be more and more outside the household. So you don't have people being raised. So therefore, during toddler stage, I feel like that's when you're supposed to be able to express yourself, but we're not being able to express ourselves because it's like, stop crying, stop this, stop that. And then 3 decades
And then
later,
you got situations where you got cyberbullying, really attacking people for different things, and people really feel that. And you've had suicides because of cyberbullying. You've had so many different things that it affects people. Cassandra, can you talk about that a little bit? How people feel they've been attacked online and they come in and really feeling down, and it's really affected them?
A lot has affected a lot of us. The disconnect, working from home environments. We've gotten used to church online to where it's not even a desire to go back to in-person church, at a location. We're socializing online, and we are so the other deception is you have self-proclaimed experts giving you information who have no education, no experience, no credentials, but they're relationship expert, they're this expert, they're that, only because they want to be a quote unquote social media influencer. Nobody challenges where their information comes from. They're only literally giving you their opinions.
Yeah.
And their opinions are created through very wounded, unhealed, subconscious mind dynamics. Okay. And then you take their opinions that haven't worked. You're 25 and you're giving us relationship advice, and you've been married for 6 months and you're trying to tell us how to make a marriage work. All of these kinds of things, and you oversaturated with information. And then now this is the big thing. Well, are you happy? Does he make you happy? Does she make you happy? We didn't hear that. I'm 60 years old. Growing, it wasn't a "are you happy" issue that kept you committed to your marriage. It was a committed to raise our family and our children. That was the question. Once you're on the other side of probably 35, happiness is something you're going to have to intentionally create for yourself. Because life doesn't necessarily lend itself to happiness. Life lends itself to contentment if you allow it to, peace, trying to find some level of satisfaction if you can, but happiness is fleeting on the other side of 35 or 40. It generally only lasts a short period of time before the next thing that you have to deal with shows up. So, and that's not doom and gloom, it's just reality. You know, it's just you're trying to survive, you're trying to keep things together. So when you make happiness the goal, when real life shows up, you can't handle it. That's all of these quick fix television shows. Put a ring on it, Ready to Love, Love is Blind, all of this, meet somebody in 10 weeks. Who do you choose? I love you. I want to be with you. I choose, you know, you've known me for a month and a half, 2 months. And then when real life shows up, you can't handle it. We've been sold so much deception under the guise of being an influencer or entertainment. But what you've done is you're creating a whole generation of people who are dealing with so much emotional trauma and rejection. It's a slippery slope downward. And so we are very disconnected. We don't have inner relationships. You have porn at an all-time high as it relates to addictions and self-fulfillment, masturbation, all of these. So now you don't need another human being for intimacy or sexual pleasures. And so it's a whole slippery slope. And it's made people very angry. People can't even have a conversation today without being extremely angry, extremely cynical. And so it is definitely a slippery slope for sure.
Yes, ma'am. Sister Nikita, you want to comment on that or share anything about that? What you see with some of your clients?
Well, one of my favorite movies is The Matrix. And from the perspective of The Matrix, we do have this, I guess you could call virtual reality that's been created by the propaganda machine, as I like to call it, of what we're supposed to be feeling, wearing, acting, all of these type of things. So I agree to a certain extent about how not just social media, but media in general has helped us to define several things, including love, including relationships. I remember one client talking about, well, not a client, but a person talking about the movie Shrek, and how if Shrek can find love, so can I. Like an ogre, you know, and like the fairy tales that have been taught to us for so long, even through Disney. And Disney is the beginning. So we're looking at these princesses and princes and how they found love, because I think it was Frozen. That was one of the first movies that was like, oh, you're gonna fall in love with somebody you just met. That was like one of the first times that Disney has really just jabbed at themselves about how they have created this dialogue about how our young people are supposed to find love. Another example is like Twilight. So Twilight has I think her name's Bella or Isabella or whatever, who falls in love with
Bella.
thank you. I'm gonna tear this up because I do not like those movies. I watched it with a set of 13-year-old twins and watched her sit in this chair for 3 months, heartbroken because her vampire boyfriend did not want to steal her soul. He was like, I don't want this for you. Like, that was a different type of love that she didn't understand and accept, and instead turned into went into a depressive state. So I wanted to leave immediately, but they wanted to watch the end of the movie. And I said, well, we need to debrief that this is not love. This is not healthy. This is not how this is supposed to go. And that's the hard part about having the television raising our children, that they're getting all of these messages and dialogues that we're not necessarily translating into reality of, okay, so we see what's happening on this TV show. Let's have a conversation about what's your thoughts, what are your feelings? And I think Camille talked about that earlier, that this generation or many generations, especially in the Black family or the brown families, don't have the opportunity to speak freely about how they're feeling or what they're feeling. So in the LGBTQ community, there's the joke about the U-Haul lesbian joke. Oh, we went on the first date, you bring a U-Haul to the second date, and we're moving in afterwards. I think a lot of that happens because a lot of LGBTQ people, when they're coming up, are having to be in the closet and they're incapable of having a real conversation about, I like this person and this is what's going on. And how do I know if this is a healthy relationship? Even with myself, I wasn't able to have a real conversation like that until I was in my upper 20s or 30s. Just like, this is my girlfriend and we're wanting to go forward, we can't have necessarily those type of transparent conversations to where we can understand how it can transfer over into a homosexual or other sexual dynamic, because there are differences, but there are a lot of similarities that we don't get to have those connections with our parents, because it's don't ask, don't tell type of policy in the home. And so where do we get our information from? Other 12 and 13-year-olds, other people who don't necessarily have healthy relationships, TV, Disney, like she talked about 90 Day Fiance and all of these type of stories. So although social media now and influencers and COVID and being at home, I think has a really big impact on how we see relationships, we can't ignore the past 40 years of programming that we've had, especially here in America, with the propaganda machine of what we're supposed to be doing and how I'm supposed to be light-skinned, straight-haired, skinny, this and that, not loving myself, and to the point where that's also what I'm looking for. So when my clients come in talking about, oh, I want this man or this woman that looks like this and they do this, I'm like, yeah, you say that, but what about their intellect? What about their spirituality? What about the way that they treat you? You're not talking about those things and what you're looking for in a relationship, but you're talking about those things being missing. And when I talk about the past, which is something, a lot of place where a lot of us get stuck, we have experienced something, but we don't ever actually go back and process the lessons that we can learn from those toxic or bad relationships. So we get stuck in that cycle, whether you have a therapist or not. We don't look through and sift through, because I tell somebody, when you've been through trauma, it sucks, but you're blessed, because you have real world experience that could potentially make you very resilient and teach you lessons that you would have never experienced. But what are we going to do with those gems that you've been given? Because we can process those and we can use them to teach ourselves healthier relationships, healthier relationship decisions in the future based upon the things that we've been through. And we don't do that. And as the sister was talking about being happy, being a fleeting, I think peace is something that we don't talk about. And having I call it what do I call it? I say that we have to ration the fun in the Black community. We ration our love, we ration our fun. I don't know if it's because we're not sure where we're going to get it from next. And I think if we could release that and get that not only internal peace, but internal love for ourselves, I don't think it would be as fleeting once you're past 35, and I'm 38, so I'm a little bit past 35. So I can't speak to your experience, but I think peace and finding more things to be joyful for and more things to be grateful for outside of a relationship and developing relationship with self, it makes it easier to have relationships with others. And sticking with you didn't say a toxic relationship, but I think in my experience, a lot of people stick with toxic relationships in a codependent and toxic way, which is something I would want to caution with alongside the advice that you were giving earlier, because yes, the question isn't necessarily, are you happy, but like, what are you looking for if it's not happiness in that relationship? Because a lot of people are holding on for a very long time. And I'm talking about 20, 30 years, toxic and abusive relationships for lack of, and that would be something that I would want to caution for our community.
Yes, ma'am. I want to talk about this. Relationships, and you said being happy, and you talked about peace also. A lot of the relationships that we choose is because of expectation of this is going to end up like this, or this is who my friends expect me to be with. And there are so many different types of relationships also, and that's basically what the show is about. And you talked about Nikita, LGBT community, and you said that it's changing, the media is changing in its representation. I know for myself, I used to cringe, I still do a little bit, seeing two men kiss on TV. I cringe. However, when two women kiss, I got a little sense of titillation. And you know, that just comes from how we are trained in that particular way. That, you know, a man can't go out and have a relationship with a man and be called, well, he can be called bisexual, but most people would just call him, okay, you are that now, unless he's trying to perpetrate, as you know, he doesn't even tell his wife that he's having that type of relationship. So it's a hush-hush thing. It is a thing that, especially brothers are not going to talk about it. If they involved with that, that's not what they're going to do, because we have such a machoism. But it's easier to talk about in the female community. Do you find that in your practice, Nikita?
That it's more accepted for lesbians than for lesbians to be bisexual versus men to be bisexuals particularly?
Yes.
Yes, I do. I do think so. And you talked about machoism, and I would ask you for, we're seemingly on definitions of words. I would wonder what your definition of that would be, but I think a lot of
Machoism is a aura, a way that you carry yourself, that you are trying to put on a certain image. You are trying to put on a certain image. You're trying to get people to see you in a particular way. Machoism, where you are strong, you're not going to take no stuff, those type of things. That's what machoism is.
So the hard part with that is what does strong mean, or what is that supposed to look like? Because I'm a strong person, and I mean physically, and I've been ridiculed for that my whole life. And so when I thought you were going to say about machoism was this toxic masculinity that we have rampant in our community. So that's why I asked you for the
That's what I was thinking.
So the toxic,
that's kind of like nihilism in a way, or nihilism, that you are portraying who you're not, and you're trying to portray in such a way you want everybody else to go along with you, as opposed to machoism. You just, macho and machoism is two different things. Macho, you just carrying a certain sense of, hey, I'm strong, I'm proud, and I'm going to step out and do my thing. Machoism, and I'm not the number one definer of all these terms. Let me say that. Machoism is, that's who you are, all trying to portray all the time, and you can't show you can't ever cry, you can't ever be compassionate, you can't ever say I'm sorry. Those type of things, that person, while a person who might have macho, there are occasions where they can let their hair down and be cool and say, hey, I'm sorry. And it comes as a part of their personality, and you say, I respect that.
So you say macho is authentic, and then machoism is inauthentic?
Good, yes. That has a lot to do with it, yes. I would say that. Now, again, I'm not the number one definer, but as the only man here, I try to convey what my brothers would say in this context and so forth.
Okay.
And talking about the LGBT community, I'm gonna go and be honest in the context of, I felt the community was bullying in the Kevin Hart situation, in the Genuine situation. And maybe a little bit in the Dave Chappelle situation, but at the same time, with the blowback against the transgenders and so forth, I can see going too far and making a whole community uncomfortable in that context, because they do go through things of a certain amount of harassment and different things that are unique to that community. So I wanted to talk about and share some of these things, especially after Cassandra was sharing that she had a lot of conversation in her practice about the feelings of her patients and so forth. Cassandra, you want to share some of that?
Yes. I have had to evolve, I will admit, in my understanding first of the LBG, but I no disrespect, I just don't know those letters. You know, the whatever they are, no disrespect. My understanding, because as I continue to interview clients as a nurse and as a therapist, a lot of the stereotypes that we have been taught around the origin of their sexuality in a lot of cases are not the case. Like, we've been taught, well, they were molested, so now they're expressing themselves this way, or some dysfunction or trauma happened and now they are expressing themselves this way. Homosexuality used to be an actual referred to as a disease in our manual, diagnostic manual, and they've now restructured and removed it, I think, as such. I have had conversations where they truly were born with that predisposition, you know, and the way that, and it has allowed me to become both more understanding and more accepting. They're in a safe space when they come to me, no judgment zone whatsoever. They can't trace back a trauma. They just know that this is just how I felt. I believe we are fallen human beings. I believe that you can be born with any level of what we would consider sin biblically, you know, but I accept them for who they are, and I never make them feel uncomfortable about their sexuality. So I have evolved in that way. I do, when you were saying feel, that I do feel, if I'm being honest, that the LBGTQ community bullies us in a way sometimes to make us accept their lifestyle. I believe how Kevin Hart felt and how other people feel is their right to feel that way. I have clients that are alcoholics. I don't have to agree to that as a lifestyle. I believe, you know, that people have a right to live the way that they live, but we don't have a right, in my opinion, to police how people feel about how they want to raise their children and what they want to promote in their own house. You know, I believe that everybody has a right to their own rights, but we don't have to have it shoved down our throat. Like, you have to make us accept it. I don't believe in that. I don't believe you should strong arm pastors that they have to marry you if it goes against the culture of their belief system and the foundations of their church. So though I personally leave the judgment to Jesus and God and the Holy Spirit, that's not my position. I have no issue with it one way or the other, but I don't believe it should be forced or people should be canceled because they tend not to accept that as a lifestyle. And that's where I have an issue with it. Other than that, live and let live. You know, I want people to be healthy emotionally. And I've had to walk clients through that process being good with themselves, whoever you choose to live. It's just like I'm completely heterosexual. If you had to tell me, well, your heterosexuality is wrong and you need to be homosexual, you and make me be that, is it's the same thing that we're doing to them. You know, they are who they are at their core. That's how they feel, that's who they are, and they have a right to be that. And so just like we don't have a right for somebody to tell us that our heterosexual predisposition is wrong, we don't have a right to tell them that their homosexual or bisexuality is wrong. I will end with this, and it was very profound, and I had never thought about it. And I heard somebody say it. I can't remember who it was, but they made a profound statement, and they said, if you can say that I chose to be homosexual, that I can say that you chose to be heterosexual. Neither one of us chose. So their natural disposition being homosexual and our natural disposition being heterosexual is innate and ingrained. And just like we don't have a right, they're not telling us, well, you chose heterosexuality. We don't have a right to tell them that they chose homosexuality. And so, but I don't believe they have a right to make us accept it.
Let me say this, and I'll let everybody speak on this.
Yeah, I agree.
It's relationships are so hard, you know, that, and the pressure of the media, the pressure of life in general, to find somebody to love, I understand that. But at the same time, there's so many influences that are trying to define you. You have to be a strong person to be yourself. And that's the thing. If a person is not strong and has a lot of trauma, has a lot of issues happening, they may be influenced to do things that they normally in another situation might not do. I'll just say that. Nikita, I want to turn it back to you. You're on mute. You're on mute. You're on mute.
You have to unmute, Nikita.
I lost the window, sorry. Yes. I I would just want to, I can't tell you what to say, but to say that a group that historically has been bullied is now bullying, I think the language is a slippery slope. I'm gonna just kind of leave that there.
I understand what you're saying, though.
Okay.
I agree with you in the context of it's really, I think it was brought to the attention by the media, whereas it might not have came up as much before.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Mhm.
Okay.
Because I'm not necessarily aware of what happened with Kevin Hart. I was on the fence about what happened with Dave Chappelle, because I'm a really big Dave Chappelle fan and I didn't want to cancel him. Now, as far as cancel culture and canceling people, I don't think anyone, and I've experienced this personally, where I had someone very close to me that did not agree with my lifestyle, which I think it's a lifestyle, but sure, we'll use the terminology. And I had to get to a point where, and you're probably going to hate that I say this, but even it really came full light when Trump was in office, because when Obama was in office, or President Obama was in office, I was upset at the way they were talking about President Obama. And I said, you know, he's my president. They were saying this, not my president stuff. And then when Trump came in and we were using the same language, I was like, well, that's hypocritical of us, even though I don't agree with him or as a president, not to make this a political thing. I'm just using it as an example, that I had to learn that we can agree to disagree without it turning into canceling each other. But at a certain point, depending on your beliefs and my beliefs, we might not be able to continue to be friends, depending on the way that you talk about that particular group of people or topic. And so in a similar way, I had to come to that understanding, even with my sexuality, that certain people will agree, certain people won't agree. We're all subject to having our own opinion about it. And I have to be open to, especially someone who is really religious in their conviction that this is an abomination. I want to pray for you. I think you're going to go to hell. And I don't know if I can be friends with you because of the choices you're making. I don't agree with you, but if I'm not going to be the one to come in between you and your spirituality, you and your God, you and your religion. And so if that is your belief, I will step back, because I wouldn't want you to turn around and do the same to me. So I understand having an understanding, and I, especially with pronouns, I'm one of the allies for non-LGBTQ people. Just tell people what your pronouns are and educate. So I think a similar thing about sexuality, educate someone about how you feel or what you love or how you experience, and then allow whatever's happening after that to be that. So if they agree, they agree. If they disagree, you come to an understanding of where we're going to go moving forward. Now, the terminology of feeling like the LGBTQ community is bullying, I don't necessarily agree with, because there is such, especially like you talked about in the transgender, gender nonconforming community, of legitimate bullying to the point of deaths. I mean, we're being murdered at alarming rates, particularly Black trans men. I wouldn't want to use that terminology because I think that is a slippery slope. But I do agree that the way that we're handling things, I'm not exact, and I don't speak for the whole entire, that's another thing that I want us to be careful of, massively grouping large amounts of people together who have their own understandings about their own experience. I don't necessarily agree with how we're handling it, but I think just like in the Black community, when we feel someone has transgressed against someone who is a representative of us, we come in and we unite, and we, with our power of our voice, the power of our vote, we do what we can to make ourselves heard and known. And so I get the feeling of thinking that the LGBTQ community was bullying these comedians. It's comedy, you don't have to listen to it. But we all know that, well, I don't want to say we all know, it could be that the spoken word can be so powerful that it can start a revolution, and not necessarily the best way, which we saw recently with Trump and everything that happened with the storming of the Capitol. So the power of the voice is something that we definitely have to be careful of with how we use it. But I do understand that with the attack that we feel, because you spoke to machoism, which I still think is very similar to toxic masculinity, or the perpetuation of it. And that's something that is not necessarily being talked about, is how did we get here to the point where we feel like we have to so fiercely defend ourselves because we were bullied. I was bullied in high school to a certain extent, where I had to defend myself when I was in high school, and I'm 6 feet tall. So the perpetuation of actually having to defend, and when you talk about machoism and not being who you are, and like having a screen or a mask, like how do we get there? Because when you had a little switch in your step when you were 6 or 7, your parents were telling you don't be a sissy and don't be a little girl and don't be this and don't be that, to the point where a lot of us created a mask of exactly who people thought we should be, because we were trained, we were beaten, we were bullied by not only people at school, but people at church, by people in the mosque, by our own family, by our grandparents, by our parents. We're not talking about that part of the conversation, but a lot of us created this mask in order to survive, in order to thrive, in order to be accepted, in order to be loved, and in several cases, in order to not be kicked out of their family unit, to not be kicked out of their houses. So yes, there are people who perpetuate something that they're not. not, but how did we get there is a question. How did certain of us get there? Because it took me almost 30 something years to really accept being non-binary. I wanted to be this for my parents. I wanted to be that for work. I wanted to be this. Even in my practice, I felt like I had to choose between being Black and being gay because I wasn't sure if the Christian population would bring their children to me as a gay therapist. But I have a pastor that I've helped with through grief, and she wanted me to speak to her church because it's not about that, but that was how ingrained that message was my whole life, that it's not acceptable to be who exactly I was, to the point where I felt I had to choose.
Let me say this, just helping us to understand a little bit and being able to speak about it is a very powerful thing. It can help bring down bridges and walls and different things like that. And we are toward the end of our show. I wanted to make sure we had time for everybody to give their final full statement, whatever you wanted to say on the issue. Relationships are hard. To find somebody to go through life with, that's a powerful thing. Now, we all have choices in who that's gonna be. I'm 5'6", you're 6 feet. You might discriminate against me because of that. So that, all of those things are built in. Somebody is, got super long hair and the other person got short hair, and so they don't like him because of that. It's like the old song by Sly and the Family Stone, we everyday people, and this person is like this person is like that, and we all got to find a way to break down bridges and survive. Now, that doesn't mean that we have to agree with everything everybody does, but we can have tolerance.
Yes.
So everybody's allowed to live.
Right.
When we get into the point of trying to physically or verbally attack this person, as Black people, we have been through all of that in our history. So we understand that. So I say we keep talking, and because undoubtedly there's going to be somebody in our families who is of another sexual orientation community. So we want to find bridges and ways to understand and to find a way to tolerate, get along, and get to the other side. So let's start with Carolyn. You want to do your final summation? You want to talk about what everything has been said?
I the only thing I have to say is I learned a whole lot, and I'm still working on myself, but it was good to hear the different views, and I have learned a lot.
All right. Do you want to share how they can get along with you, or would you like to share after the show or something? Or you want to share with our audience? We do have Facebook, and when I get off of here, I'm going to go and check Facebook to see what comments are there, and then if they directed it to you personally, I will reach out to you so that you may answer whatever we have coming in on Facebook. Carolyn, anything else?
You know what? I'm good.
Okay.
I
Right.
just learned. I just like listening and learning, basically, and I learned a lot.
That's
Thank
a
y'all.
beautiful thing. Well, thank you, ma'am. Thank you for being here. Sister Moss Queen, Camille, would you like to share?
Yes, I really enjoyed everyone's perspective. I guess my takeaways would be self-love is the best love, and finding I feel finding God and finding self is one of the same in certain ways. And I feel like in order to know and learn what unconditional love is, you have to first do those things for yourself. So for me, it was a journey of really diving into that again, 1 Corinthians 13, and like, can I be patient, kind, and all those things, not boastful with myself? Because I feel like growing up a lot of times, especially as millennials, we did get that tough love and kind of into the like too tough of love, to where you're I do feel like that's a trend for us. We're very hard on ourselves. So it's just like peeling back those layers and really stop giving myself conditional love. And I felt like when I learned the difference between unconditional and conditional with myself, that opened the door for me to be able to learn what love is and share that with other people and be able to have a healthy relationship and even start the process of even trying to, because anything before that, it's just, well, I'm gonna take my love away because of this, or, the expectations like we talked about, which are never good. And I feel like that's why we struggle, because I feel like things are only as hard as we make them. And I think that life is rather simple. It's just humans that make it hard. And I just always go back to that. I also want to touch on the part where we talked about, I think it was Nikita talked about the staying in long toxic relationships and how we stay in that. And I really also attribute that to our childhood, because a lot through my healing journey and everything, I realized that, why am I attracting these type of people in my life? Why am I attracting these type of men? Why am I putting up with these things and seeing the trends in my family members and seeing a trend in my lineage and like my sisters, my aunts, my mother's mother, and, down the line, and the type of partners that they chose. And it's because when we come into this world, our family is our first definition of everything. So it's just like, if I'm taught that that is love, which it's not, it's toxic, then you're going to attract that because you think that that's the correct definition of what that is. So we stay in these long toxic relationships because it's familiar, it's comfortable. And unfortunately, it is comfortable because in actuality, it's discomfort, So really just digging on that. And like, again, self-love is the best love. And I feel like that is the foundation of everything. And when you can do that, then you can open the door to having healthy, long-lasting, and like striving for unconditional love. Because I feel like we might not be able to be just as Christ was unconditionally, but striving and doing our best. I feel like a lot of times we don't do our best in striving what that is. I feel like a lot of times we lean too much on, well, I'm just this. It's like you are, and that's like the, when you try and fail, I feel like that's when you can say, oh, well, I'm human. But I feel like a lot of times we put that in the forefront and like, well, I'm just this, so I'm not going to put my best foot forward. And I feel like you put your best foot forward, and when you fall, then it's because you're only human, but not in the forefront and making excuses for ourselves.
Thank you very much. Would you like to share how people can get in touch with you?
Oh, yes.
If they want to buy some moss, sea moss.
Yes. So Houston Sea Moss Queen. That's Houston SEACMOSS Queen on Instagram and social media. Instagram and Facebook. Phone number is 832-308-0027. And like I said, I also do real estate. So that's buy, sell, lease, pretty much anything. That phone number is 678-362-3283. Camille Smith at Keller Williams Metropolitan. That's camille.smith@kw.com.
And your Prairie View Panther.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Anna, AKA. Okay.
Oh, wait.
Go ahead.
Wait. What did you said? Like as known as?
No, I
You
did.
said in your AK.
I am a Delta Sigma Theta Diva.
Uh-oh. I done messed up. And we went over this before the show.
You messed up.
I done messed up real bad.
You messed up.
Golly. Okay, I got to make that up to you, my sister Moss Queen. I got to make that up to you. Because you told me before the show. Yes, okay. I apologize.
It's okay.
I apologize.
And thank you again for having me on the show. I always enjoy it here.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Cassandra.
Okay, I will. I have a client at 8, so they'll wait a few minutes while I get transition. But it was very a very exciting conversation that we had, insightful as usual. Love is many splendid things, as the song says. It's multi-layered, multi-dynamic. None of us actually have all of the answers. And I think it's something that we'll walk out for the rest of our journey on this earth realm. What I would like to say is that we give ourselves permission not only to love ourselves, but expect to be loved in a way that's healthy. I'm a big I like controversial types of things, and I like to put controversial statements on my Facebook page because I like to generate conversation. And what is always strange to me is how much abnormal is becoming normal. The bar is set so low as far as how people expect to be treated. And a lot of it maybe is because that's all they know. I mean, they may have not seen healthy, they don't know what healthy looks like. So when you make a statement about something that's healthy or have a position, it's attacked. And that attack shows how somebody's subconscious mind has been programmed. It shows the wounds, it shows the inner healing that needs to take place. And so I would add that we want to seek to not only be the best, but expect to be treated as the best. Give yourself permission to be treated well, to be honored, to be respected, to be cared for. Even though many of us are leaders and educate, of course, I'm a Prairie View alumni as well, and College of Nursing, 1988. And but I expect to be treated well and expect to be treated with respect because I saw it. I was raised in an environment that was very healthy and very nurturing. And so as you love yourself, as Camille stated, as Christ loved you, as you understand what that really looks like, then we can speak to the Father and he can bless us with somebody who has the capacity to be that king that we deserve as men and women of God, or that queen that we deserve as men and women of God. But the reason why we accept toxic masculinity or toxic anything is because our subconscious mind is so programmed that toxicity is normal. That's the expectation. And so I want to challenge you to allow the Holy Spirit, if you're a Christian believer, to shine a light on that aspect of what it means to truly be loved as Christ loves his church. What does that actually mean? What does that respect level actually looks like? And as we learn how to do that, as we walk that out, then our energy, because it's healthy, will attract healthiness. The law of attraction is a very real 100% law. If you have toxicity in your subconscious mind drives 90% of how you show up to life. Your conscious mind dictates how you engage with your environment, how you interact, how you make decisions. You're driven in life by your subconscious. If your subconscious mind is toxic, the way you show up in life is going to be toxic. This is why willpower rarely works. You may have a thought in your mind about what you want to do, but it may be correct, but your subconscious mind is programmed opposite of that. Your subconscious mind is going to win most of the time. This is why willpower doesn't work. It takes a change in the mindset and the mentality, takes a reprogramming of your subconscious for you to really see long-lasting and effective change. And so that's a whole therapeutic process. I don't want to get too technical with that. But the reason why we're seeing so much toxicity is because our subconscious minds are so toxic and so wounded. And so as we seek revelation from whatever your source of spirituality or revelation is, and we seek to change and grow and evolve and expect higher, expect greater, then greater will come to us. And I do believe that that is how things will be. And we can be healed as a people, but we have to receive healing. So God bless you. Thank you for including me again. I look forward to it. It was
As
amazing.
always, Cassandra.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
ma'am. You want to share how people can get in touch with you?
Cassandra Barnes RN on my Facebook page, Cassandra Barnes RN at gmail.com, and the Victoria Barnes Mental Health and Wellness Center on my Facebook practice page as well.
Well, thank you very much. I just want to interject here that I was raised a Jehovah's Witness, and a lot of people have a difference of opinion with that. I have a difference of opinion with that at this particular time to a certain extent. There's a lot of different perceptions of God and spirituality, and I tend to respect all of them that believe in do unto others as you would have them do unto you, as well as love your brother as yourself, but with self-love and love on different levels. Sister Nikita, your final statement, please.
Whew. This was an interesting dialogue, and I really appreciate the
I hope you
invitation.
feel that it was welcoming, it was open,
yes.
it was wanting to learn, as well as wanting to start a dialogue and an opening.
I always do, and I appreciate the platform that you've created for this type of conversation. Of course, letting me be the representative for our community. I definitely am thankful for that. Like I talked about earlier, feeling like I had to choose at one point being Black or being gay. It's nice to in recent times, I don't know if it's post-COVID or the pandemic of impending doom, that now we are more, I feel to a certain extent more welcome in a lot more places than I would have before. I do think that we are growing, even though in certain ways we're going backwards in certain communities. But one thing that we also, I think, is starting to run rampant is like the codependency that can come from something like a sex or love addiction that is being perpetuated by the media and by this hunger for love at any cost. And I it's so weird. Every time I think of something, I swear Camille would pull it out my brain and say it. I'm like, dang it, I gotta think of something else to say. But that toxic love, or this codependency that a lot of people are being, I would almost say, are suffering from, I think is directly related to that self-love and self-concept question of not necessarily knowing who I am, what I want, what I need, what I want, but also not feeling a safe place that has been created within ourselves or in these relationships to speak to that. And I can remember personally being in a place where it was a very toxic relationship, and then thinking to myself, this is probably the point where I should exit, but I love this person so much. What can I personally do to try to make this relationship work? And so when you talked about relationships being hard, kind of like Camille said, it doesn't necessarily have to be hard if we're looking at it from a different perspective of, and I talk about this with my clients, finding contrast versus alignment. And I have redefined the power of discernment to be taking in my past and taking the lessons from that and learning, the people that are surrounding me, are they both willing and able to love me or to be in my life in the way that I need them to be? And if not, how can I give them a different position, whether it's outside of my life or outside of a direct relationship with me? And the more that we find alignment and flow with the type of energies that we have around us, I feel like the easier it becomes to develop relationship in general. And so when we say, oh, this relationship is so hard and we're just working so hard, I start to question like the compatibility And it doesn't mean that you're a bad person and they're a good person or vice versa, but the compatibility of the relationship that you're pursuing. And something like a love coach or a therapist can help with. And when I have clients come in, I don't tell them, I'm not trying to fix your relationship. I'm here to help you gain clarity about what is important to you and what you're looking for. And if you have the ability to love your partner the way that they need to be loved, as well as the willingness, because those two things I think have to be partnered to a certain extent for a relationship to continue to move forward. As they say, seeking first to understand and then to be understood is something I think a lot of us don't do, which makes that wall go up when we're trying to communicate with someone else. And so these are some of the skills that I would teach my clients. Like I said earlier, I am a licensed professional counselor and a life coach, an inspirational speaker looking for speaking engagements around the country, both virtual and in person. I can be found at tackleyourdreams with an s.com, phone number 832-953-5482. And we first dig into, even with couples, we first dig into a question, something like, how do you determine your own worth? Because a lot of times our worth is either determined by our work and how we can serve others, which leads to codependency. When that is the foundation for your worth and it's stripped from you, you seek to fill that hole, like a sinking hole, with someone else repetitively over and over and over again. So how do you determine your worth? Is it through your work or is it through other people? And how can we redefine that with our own definition in a way that we can fill our own cup of self-love and not have to rely so much on outside? So how do we affirm ourselves but get reaffirmation from the outside source so that we're not thriving or living off of the affirmation that other people give us? And when we can define that for ourselves, we can further that self-love conversation. And I would be remiss to say that I believe more in an African spirituality and how we connect with our ancestors. And one of the things that really helped me propel with self-love was when they said, I can't wait until you can see you how I see you. Not to mention, if you think how you were last year compared to now, imagine where you're going to be next year or 5 years from now. And so that goes with relationships as well as how we are starting to develop this self-love within ourselves and finding positive people that are both willing and able to love you the way that you need, so that you can have a safe place to make mistakes and a safe place to grow, a safe place to speak on the things that you need to speak on without feeling that you're going to have to be ridiculed or subjected to those types of things. So that was my spiel. I do appreciate the platform and I thank you all for your contributions today.
Well, thank you very much. I want to say that this conversation or portions of this conversation will continue on our next show, which is May 18th. We're going to talk about toxic relationships and why people stay and how that they can heal from them. I am going to invite some other guests. Of course, you all are welcome to join us again. That is May 18th in 2 weeks. So we're going to continue. Relationships are so important because if we can have relationships that work, we can bring more people into our circle, and the circle can vibrate or shine and help more people to heal, more people to find more meaningful lives. One of the things that I did with this show, when I first started, I was very shy. I was very not confident, but through this show, through this forum, I have started to grow, and there's not much fear anymore. So a forum like this, and if you can get into a circle that is helpful to you and helps you to heal and grow and provides that support, it can help whoever you are to become a better individual. I thank you. My name is Baruti Carl Alexander. This is the 130th episode of the Sourceseeker Hour. We will see you in 2 weeks. And if you put something on Facebook and want one of our guests to answer, I'll be contacting them. Thank you. We will see you in 2 weeks. Thank you very much.